Hi everyone, thank you so much for joining us today for FoodCloud and Danone's second webinar together. My name is Ruth Creaton and I'm the Corporate Fundraising Officer with FoodCloud, and I'm going to be moderating today's webinar. We're so grateful for Danone, our partners, for their continued support and for being here with us today. So in 2023, Danone and FoodCloud launched a 3-year partnership together to develop a nutrition education program for community organizations like you using surplus food. So as part of this partnership, Danone's dietitians and nutritionists directly support FoodCloud's charity and community group partners with nutritional education and advice. And to support the development of future webinars and new recipes, we'd be really grateful if you could provide some feedback via our live survey that my colleague Bree will share now. And there's no pressure, you can do this webinar throughout the survey throughout the webinar. And a little bit of background about Danone. Danone's worldwide mission is to bring health through food to as many people as possible. And that really aligns with FoodCloud's mission for a world where no good food goes to waste. Additionally, Danone is B Corp certified, showing their commitment to people and planet and using business as a force for good. In Ireland, Danone's health focus portfolio spans 4 categories: essential dairy and plant-based products, specialized nutrition and waters, and includes leading brands such as Actimel, Activia, Alpro, GetPro, Evian, and Volvic. Danone is the first company in Ireland to work with FoodCloud to provide nutrition education. And in the last year, Danone's in-house nutritionists and dietitians have developed a bank of balanced recipes to help community organizations in our network, like yourselves, to make the most of surplus food. You can find these recipes on our website under the Learn section, and they're also in our monthly newsletter, Food for Thought, that I'm sure many of you are subscribers of. And continuing throughout this year in 2025 and into 2026, Danone will continue to share more tailored recipes and nutritional information for our community, organisation and charity partners, as well as additional expert-led webinars like this one to support you to do more with your surplus food and some tips and tricks on how to get the best out of surplus food. This specific webinar is on nutrition for toddlers and children, which will provide tips to encourage healthy eating for children and make sure that they're getting everything they need in food and nutrition. Now I'm going to hand you over to Kellie O Connor, who is one of Danone's nutritionists, and she specializes in toddler and child feeding. She'll present on behalf of Danone's team of nutritionists and dietitians today. Over to you, Kellie. Thank you.
Thank you, Ruth. And I'm delighted to speak today on behalf of Danone. So thanks a million for the invitation. So yeah, as Ruth said, I'm going to take a little look through the diets of toddlers, but also moving up through the age groups. So school children, age kind of 5 to 12, and we'll have a little look at teenagers and their diets and kind of special needs as well in terms of nutrition. And hopefully, if you even take just 2 to 3 points home with you or a way that you find useful in terms of, or practical in terms of your everyday work or life, that'll be a win. So yeah, just focus on what's important for you. So first of all, we have a look at the toddler diet. So toddler years are really an important time because toddlers grow at an enormous rate. So from between 1 and 2, they're growing at a really fast rate, probably like faster than even when they're teenagers. So they take this massive growth spurt, and we need a lot of nutrition then to nourish this and to support this growth. So I mean, in the first year of life, they do grow very fast as well, but they have faster growth in the first 3 years of their life than any other stage. So their brain is growing really fast, and you know, they're developing all sorts of skills and you know, I suppose milestones that they're reaching. So they'll start off with only a couple of words around kind of 1ish, and then by the age of 3, they'll probably have around 900 words. So it's a huge amount in terms of their physical growth and their brain development. And that's why diet is really important in supporting all of that. So there's a couple of key nutrients that are really important for this stage. One is vitamin D, or also known as the sunshine vitamin, and the other is iron. And we know that these can be quite difficult for toddlers to get in their diet for various reasons. So I suppose their appetites are quite small. Their little tummies are really only the size of their fist at this point. So it can be hard to get enough nutrition into them to make sure that they're meeting all of their nutrition needs. And as well as that, you can get a lot of fussiness in toddlers, and various factors that maybe they don't eat as well as they did yesterday, for example. And I'll go into fussy eating in a few minutes. But yeah, these are really two key nutrients that are really important at this time, because the vitamin D, along with calcium, will help their bone growth and development, which again, in line with that really rapid phase of growth, their bones are going to be growing. So you're going to need vitamin D to support that. And because I suppose, apart from this week, Ireland tends not to get a huge amount of sunshine, it is important to get it from the diet. And, there's only a few sources in the diet of vitamin D, such as oily fish, eggs, and some fortified foods like breakfast cereals, which are really useful, and fortified milks, such as I suppose super milk, and very fast as well. But they have faster growth in the first 3 years of their life than any other stage. So their brain is growing really fast, and they're developing all sorts of skills and I suppose milestones that they're reaching. So they'll start off with only a couple of words, around kind of 1ish, and then by the age of 3, they'll probably have around 900 words. So it's a huge amount in terms of their physical growth and their brain development. And that's why diet is really important in supporting all of that. So there's a couple of key nutrients that are really important for this stage. One is vitamin D, or also known as the sunshine vitamin, and the other is iron. And we know that these can be quite difficult for toddlers to get in their diet for various reasons. So I suppose their appetites are quite small. Their little tummies are really only the size of their fist at this point. So it can be hard to get enough nutrition into them to make sure that they're meeting all of their nutrition needs. And as well as that, you can get a lot of fussiness in toddlers, and various factors that maybe they don't eat as well as they did yesterday, for example. And I'll go into fussy eating in a few minutes. But yeah, these are really two key nutrients that are really important at this time, because the vitamin D, along with calcium, will help their bone growth and development, which again, in line with that really rapid phase of growth, their bones are going to be growing. So you're going to need vitamin D to support that. And because I suppose, apart from this week, Ireland tends not to get a huge amount of sunshine, it is important to get it from the diet. And, there's only a few sources in the diet of vitamin D, such as oily fish, eggs, and some fortified foods like breakfast cereals, which are really useful, and fortified milks, such as I suppose super milk. And yes.
Can I just interrupt you? Do you mind putting it on presentation mode, the slides? So we can
sorry, I thought I had done.
No, don't worry at all. I think if you press slideshow and then click present, then we can follow along with the slides.
Sorry. Okay, so I was saying that vitamin D can be quite hard to get from foods, because not many foods are a source of vitamin D. So it's important to be conscious of sources of vitamin D in their diet. Eggs are a really useful one, because most kids, I suppose, will eat eggs in some shape or form, whether that's scrambled or boiled eggs, or even mixed into pancakes, that sort of thing, or French toast can be a really good way to get eggs into kids. And then iron is super important as well. It's really important for their cognitive and brain development. And again, it can be quite difficult to get iron into small children, because, red meat is a really important source. And because unfortunately, when it's cooked, red meat is brown and quite unappealing, kids can be, quite fussy about that. So, it's really difficult to make sure they're getting enough iron. So I suppose, just trying to make sure they are eating a little bit of red meat every week, but also including other sources such as your green leafy vegetables, kind of trying to sneak those in where you can. Fortified breakfast cereals, again, are really useful for that sort of vitamins and minerals that are really important. And thankfully most children will eat those with milk. So you're getting a good intake of vitamin D, iron, and calcium there. And then some fortified milks as well, such as like super milk and super milk doesn't have added iron, but some toddler milks have them, and super milk does have added vitamin D. So I've moved slides. Can you just let me know if that was okay? It moved along, did it?
Yeah, that moved along, we can see.
Great, perfect. So as I said, we know from Irish research, and specifically Irish research, there's really good research that gets done every few years in the diets of all the cohort age groups within Ireland. So we can have a really good snapshot of the diet of, whatever age group that we're looking at. So really toddlers need 5 times more vitamin D in terms of their kilogram of body weight than adults. So really, again, we have to pack a lot of nutrition into their small amounts of food in the day. And they need nearly the same amount of iron as a 30-year-old man. So that's quite significant in terms of what they need and how much they eat. Again, thinking that their little tummies are only the size of their fist. So, it's really important that we maximize what they're getting in terms of good nutrition over treats, I suppose, to make sure that they're getting enough of what they need. So the food pyramid, I'm sure everyone's familiar with it. A couple of years ago, so around kind of 2020, the government for the first time released a food pyramid for 1 to 4 year olds. So before that, there was guidance in terms of this age group, but there was no specific food pyramid. So it can be a really helpful way for people to know what kind of portions to give and how much of certain foods that their toddlers or their kind of preschoolers need. So we can see here that on the bottom shelf you've got your carbohydrate foods. So these are really important for energy and B vitamins. So again, you're supporting that growth with energy rich foods. Then you've got your fruit and vegetables, which are really important for vitamins and minerals. You've got your calcium-rich foods in the blue shelf there, which are really important for vitamin D and calcium. So again, supporting that really rapid stage of growth they're going through. In the yellow section, you're looking at your protein-rich foods, so your eggs, your beans, your meat and fish, those sort of foods. Again, really important for supporting the growth that they're going through at the moment. And then up the top, you've got your kind of fats and spreads and oils, which are going to be used sparingly. And at the very top, you've got your treats. And when this food pyramid came out, there was actually a bit of controversy because the recommendation was to have like maybe 2 or 3 crisps a day, or a portion would be like a couple of crisps, or a very small piece of chocolate, which obviously any children are going to probably have a meltdown about if you offer them 1 or 2 crisps. But it's just to be mindful, I suppose, that treats don't have to be everyday foods. And if you can keep them to 1 or 2 days a week, that's really key. But encourage like lots of healthy snacks otherwise, and I have some ideas for healthy snacks coming up as well. In terms of portions, then it can be really hard to know in terms of for kids what kind of portions. So Safe Food and the gov.ie websites do focus in on this, so it can be really helpful just to visualize. And these are just some examples, but for example, about half the amount of cooked chicken that an adult would eat. 1 Weetabix as opposed to 2 for a child, a small amount of baked beans with 1 slice of toast, for example, and even half a banana is a portion for children 1 to 4 years. So it's just a really good visual that you might find helpful in terms of what should be in a child's portion, and even using smaller bowls and plates as well can be really helpful there, so that we don't overfeed or encourage them to eat too much. Again, that's quite important as well in terms of the balance between being overweight and normal weight. But as I mentioned, it's not always easy feeding toddlers because they have these notions, and they as this says, I know I ate broccoli yesterday, I know I ate it last week, but I think I've changed my mind now, thank you very much. So anyone who's had toddlers or dealings with toddlers or even preschool children will probably very likely have experienced something like this. And it's one of the most common questions that we would certainly get through our care line. My daughter ate every veg under the sun and now she just won't eat any. So it is something that does happen, and generally it is a phase, and it normally will pass. So it's kind of just perseverance, offering, the same food many times over, because, if they're not familiar with it or they decide they don't like it, it doesn't mean that they don't like it. It just means they're kind of exercising their independence. So it's okay to keep offering it, say nothing about it, just put it on the plate. If they don't eat it, say, okay, lift the plate, don't worry about it. It's when you start making a big deal about things that then they realize, oh, I can use this as, kind of a power trip nearly. So it's just try not to make a big deal of it, and try not to get stressed about it. But I know from experience it's very hard not to get stressed when they're being fussy and you're really concerned about what they're eating. And also, like, they, over the week they might, they might have the odd fussy day, but through over the week, if they're eating plenty and a wide variety of food, then that's kind of more important than just focusing in on one day. So try to just, focus on that rather than being really anxious if they don't eat well on one particular day. And there's loads of situations that can cause this kind of, fussiness or refusal. So they could be teething, they could be sick, or, coming up with a cold or something like that. They could be tired. Like, we all have off days, so it's only fair that toddlers and preschoolers do as well. So it's not always easy to give them what they need, because just, some days are better than others, and we all know that. But there's some, tips that we can use to try and help them eat well. Other factors could be that they're being shouted at, or they've had a run in preschool with one of their little friends, and it's annoying them. They might be pressured to eat more when they've had enough. So that's something that we do quite a lot, I suppose. It's like, clean your plate, you have to finish your dinner. Whereas toddlers actually have this innate knowledge or, ability to know when they're full. So, and it's a really good thing to have, because, then they know they don't overeat. So it's important not to pressure them to eat more than, when they say they've had enough. It's okay to say, okay, fine. And just, if they're hungry later on, offer them a healthy snack. And if they're continually offered food and drink throughout the day, this can really interrupt the meal times then, because they're just not hungry enough to eat at meal time. So if they're constantly snacking throughout the day, then of course they're not going to be hungry at dinner time. So, we kind of just need to keep an eye in terms of the snacks. Food chaining is just something I wanted to touch on because it's quite an interesting concept, quite new, I suppose, but it's for kids, I suppose, who, have really very fussy tendencies in terms of food, and will really only eat like one type of, one brand of chips or one brand of nuggets, or, very, very specific needs. And this is quite common. So to help the child kind of broaden their horizons, I suppose, in terms of what they're going to eat, food chaining is a way of doing this. So you kind of take your child's safe foods, and then you slowly introduce them to similar foods so that they can increase the variety. Now, this could take, weeks, or even months. It's really slow progress. But, it's small steps, and it's important not to rush the child, because otherwise it'll just be really off-putting to them. So you start with a food that your child really likes already and accepts, and then you look for links kind of between this food and the kind of end point. So this example here goes from McDonald's fries right up to mashed potato. So, and the steps in between that. Now these steps could, this could take 9 weeks to go through these different steps. So you might offer one food every week, move on to the next one, the next one, the next one, see how it goes, if they're, accepting them. If not, you might have to move back a step. It could be very slow, and that's okay as well. But, every little step that you make is progress. So don't be disheartened if they don't make, really fast progress. It's definitely a slow process. But I do think it's a really good way of kind of moving away from just one particular food that they'll only have, and kind of broadening what they will eat. And it's the same with like chicken nuggets right up to a piece of, plain chicken or roast chicken. You can do similar. So chicken nuggets, chicken goujons, chicken tenders kind of thing, and then the kind of plain roast chicken. Or same with fish, you could try, fish fingers right up to a piece of plain fish. So I just think it's something worth trying if you encounter children who have very specific dietary needs or kind of preferences and only eat certain types of foods. So we'll move on now to have a look at the diet of school children and teens. So this is the food pyramid for adults and school children and teens. So it's the same once you reach the age of 5, pretty much the food pyramid and the dietary recommendations are similar throughout the age groups. There's just a couple of little things to be aware of for different cohorts within the teenagers and children that we need to be aware of, which I'll talk about in a second. So in terms of specific nutrition needs for school children, there really aren't a huge amount. At this point, they should be eating the same meals as the rest of the family, and they should be having healthy snacks throughout the day to support their growth and energy. So they will be growing, all the time, and they'll have, particularly if they're doing sports and activities after school, they'll have a lot of energy needs. So healthy snacks can help to support this. And one particular thing in terms of the food pyramid that it mentions is that kids aged 9 to 12 years need 5 servings of dairy products every day. So for the rest of the population, except for this age group and teenagers, they need 3 servings of dairy products, so milk, cheese and yogurt, whereas the 9 to 12-year-olds need 5 servings. And again, that's to support their rapid growth that they're going to start going through as they reach their teenage years, to support their bone development, which is really important. So milk, cheese, yogurt, so like 200 ml glass of milk would be a portion, a small piece of cheese about the size of a matchbox, and your regular pot of yogurt, they would be portions of dairy. So, 5 is quite a lot. So you really do have to think about it in terms of where they're going to get these from. So, for example, they have milk in their cereal in the morning time. They could have a yogurt as a snack at some point during the day. They could have cheese in a sandwich. They could have pasta with a kind of milky, cheesy based sauce, and maybe another bowl of cereal at some point, or a glass of milk with their dinner. So that will help get, those servings in. But it is quite a lot. So you do kind of need to think about it in terms of how they're going to manage that. And then the other key thing at this age group is red meat for iron to support their energy levels. And again, their rapid phase of growth. So, you need to be looking at offering red meat or alternatives kind of 2 to 3 times a week to make sure that they're getting enough energy and iron in their diet. Then having a look at teenagers. So teenagers really need, again, 5 portions of the dairy products every day to support this rapid stage of growth. Teenage girls in particular with the onset of menstruation are at risk of low iron in their diet. So again, the red meat, the fortified cereals, pulses and beans, things like lentils in soups. You can even add lentils into things like chilies or make vegetarian type chili or bolognese. And actually, they're a really useful and inexpensive way to bulk out. Other dishes that have red meat, like bolognese or lasagna, you can throw some lentils in and it really helps. And then healthy snacks will provide energy to support growth, sports and activities, and of course, the studying that comes at this age group. Can everyone hear me okay? I think our electricity just went off in the building.
Yeah, I can hear you perfectly, Kelly. Great.
Okay, so we have a look through some healthy breakfast ideas, some healthy lunch, snacks and dinners. So really, it's common sense, to be honest. Healthy breakfasts are a really good way to get in fiber, first of all, which we're all lacking in. It is quite difficult to get enough fiber in the diet, but breakfast can be a really good way to do that with wholemeal cereals or whole grain breads, for example. And then thinking about the milk and cheese and yogurt needs of particularly the 9 to 12-year-olds and the teenagers, it's a really good opportunity at breakfast time to get a couple of those portions in, so they could have milk with their cereal and maybe a yogurt alongside or afterwards with some berries or something like that. And eggs also are really useful at breakfast for getting some protein in to, again, support that growth that they're having and repair from whatever activities they're doing. And then fruit as well, of course, it really key at breakfast, because we're encouraged to have at least 5 portions, if not 7 per day. So berries, for example, on your cereal or a banana is another really good way to get some fruit into your diet. Then in terms of lunches, so sandwiches are really handy, especially for kids who are, taking sandwiches to school. You can get some really healthy fillings in there, like egg and salad. tuna with sweet corn, or for example, chicken fillet with salad as well. So all really easy to prepare. And again, a good time to get teenagers and kids involved in food prep. So, let them make their own lunch, within reason, of course. But, if I was leaving it up to my kids, they'd be having chocolate spread sandwiches every day. But, trying to get them to, chop up an egg and mix it with a bit of mayonnaise and all of that, or whatever they like, a bit of sweet corn in there, things that they like, so that they will actually eat it. And it doesn't all come home again at the end of the day. Then things like leftovers can be really handy. So if you have pasta for dinner the night before, for example, and you've got some leftover, you can, throw a few bits in, a bit of chicken or tuna, a bit of sweet corn in there, put it in a little lunchbox with a fork, and off they go. That can be really handy. And scrambled eggs, if they're at home, eggs are really handy always. So scrambled eggs or omelets or boiled eggs, or even a small tin of baked beans with some wholemeal toast would be a really good lunch to have, followed by some fruit or yogurt. And something like soups, again, the lentils are really good for protein and kind of fibre as well. So really good idea to try and, have something like that once a week with some whole grain bread and maybe some cheese as well. So getting your dairy in there. So it's just looking for little ways to get that dairy in, to get the fruit and veg in, and to get some fibre in, and also some protein. So, it sounds like a lot, but it's really not. Like, it's, once you have your whole grain bread, you've got your fibre for energy, and to fill you up. You've got your bit of chicken or eggs or sweet corn or with tuna, that's kind of your protein, and your veg with some salad as well. And then if you're having a soup, it can be lentil based. It's going to give you some protein and fibre. So, we tend to be creatures of habit. So we do tend to eat the same kind of lunch most days. And that's absolutely fine. And same for teenagers and school kids. If they bring the same lunch every day, that's absolutely fine, as long as it, does contain some kind of healthier elements like here. Then looking at some healthy dinners. So, again, these are all things that, aren't kind of alien to us. So hopefully most kids will enjoy these things. So like your stir fries. So you can use anything from chicken, prawns, fish, even kidney beans, whatever type of protein you might have, with some, rice or noodles and lots of veg. Really good way to incorporate lots of veg in there. Omelets, again, you can, you've got your eggs in there. You might get some cheese as well for protein and calcium. And you can add any veg in there, like chopped peppers or onions, mushrooms, etc. Bolognese is usually a family favorite. So as I was saying, you can sneak some lentils in there. You can also sneak in veg if you're making a sauce from scratch. Really good way to use leftover veg as well, or anything, veg that's on the brink of kind of going off or getting a bit soggy looking. Just chop it up and throw it into your bolognese and whiz it all up, and it's perfect. So really good way to help prevent food waste there. Pasta then is obviously the perennial favorite. Tends to be an easy one as well. So, whether it's your kids will only eat plain pasta with some grated cheese, that's absolutely fine. Occasionally you can try to maybe put a little bit of cheese sauce on it, mix in some chicken pieces. It's, if you have to hide the stuff in there, do it, because it's just about getting the food into them really. And then especially when they're younger, when they're older, you can kind of, reason with them a bit more. But when they're younger and you're a bit worried about their intakes, then don't be afraid to hide the veg, or, whiz in a bit of chicken into a kind of a cheesy sauce for mac and cheese, because, it's getting a bit of extra protein into them as well. Things like chicken pies, again, add veg when you can into those type of things. Meat, fish or chicken, your kind of traditional dinners are absolutely perfect as well. Cottage pies or lasagna, really good because you're getting that red meat in. And then things like homemade pizza, which, is so easy to do. You can even just use like tortilla wraps and, a bit of passata or tomato based sauce and any veg that you have at all. And some grated cheese, perfect to throw in the oven, and even for lunch as well. And older kids can help, can do it themselves really, and younger kids can help with it as well. So it kind of encourages that interest in food and healthy eating from a young age. And then finally, the drinks options. So the advice is that water and milk are the best options, and very occasionally things like unsweetened fruit juice. flavored milks or yogurt drinks, which, the flavored milks tend to have quite a bit of sugar added to them. So look for no added sugar varieties. Your diluted kind of sugar-free or no added sugar squash or cordials. Smoothies are good because, again, you can use up fruit that's maybe, tipping into it's past its best. So you can whiz up, kind of mushy pears and raspberries and things like that, and they're perfect in a smoothie with a little bit of yogurt. So you've got your calcium and your vitamins and minerals from your fruit. And then fruit juice drinks are, the advice is to limit to 1 small glass a day because, again, they are quite high in sugar, and to have them with meal times because then they've got less a chance to attack the enamel in the teeth. So again, water and milk are the best options. So like most kids now, most schools will only allow water in the water bottle. So, it is kind of getting more widespread. So it's easier to encourage them to drink water. So in terms of snacks then, you've got your kind of more light snacks and your more filling snacks. So again, I won't go through all of these, but they're not, nothing out of the ordinary here. Healthy eating is boring, and that's the reality. Unfortunately, there's no kind of, fun or brand new things I'm going to bring to this, but it's really back to basics. So your fruit and veg, yogurts, milk, crackers and cheese, breadsticks, that sort of thing are really handy to have for snacking on, for young kids coming in from school, teenagers, etc. Rice cakes, any sort of toppings, peanut butter, all of that are all good to offer them for snacks when they're either on the go or running out the door to football or whatever it is. And if they need something a bit more substantial, a boiled egg with toast or some beans and toast is absolutely fine as well, or some toast with banana. And then finally, just a note on energy drinks. So I know it's a major problem, in terms of the peer pressure and the pressure from kids on parents to get them these energy drinks. And we see it, you only have to walk down the street when you see kids on their lunch break and they're having huge cans of these energy drinks. So really, the advice from the Safe Food and the government is really that energy drinks are not suitable for children or teenagers. And, if you think about it, so a 500 ml energy drink can contain up to 17 teaspoons of sugar, which is phenomenal, and 2 espresso cups worth of caffeine. Now, if I had 2 espressos, I would be, dizzy and probably have the shakes. So you can only imagine the effect it will have on a teenager or a small child, or, even a school going child. So, high doses of caffeine can cause anxiety. So, it's kind of chicken or egg, or are kids anxious because, they're not having these drinks, or are they anxious because they are having them? And then the energy drinks, again, they've got a huge amount of sugar and calories. So there's no other nutrition in there for them. And again, can cause, gain and obesity. So just really not a good idea in terms of the effects they can have on their health. So just to finish with some useful websites. So safefood.net is really, they have loads of information on there. I took a lot of this information from there in terms of healthy eating for families and kids of all ages. FoodCloud, as Ruth mentioned, we've contributed some recipes from Danone over the last year or so. So there's lots of recipes on the website there that might be helpful. And then gov.ie, again, has, the food pyramids and things like that. So hopefully you'll find something useful. So thank you so much for listening. And I hope everyone has, even if you just, as I said, take away 1 or 2 key points, I'd be happy with that. And I'm really happy to take any questions now as well.
Thank you so much, Kelly. That was so interesting. And I was so surprised by some statistics you shared that they need 5 times more vitamin D than the average adult and the same amount of iron as a man. So I was not aware of those facts. So it was really interesting from a personal level, and I'm sure our charity partners feel the same. Such a deep dive into how we can best support children, both toddlers and teenagers, and the development through good nutrition, which is so key. And there's really some good tips as well on how to support children who have developed picky eating and challenging behaviors. And I think especially around food chaining, when you were saying to be patient and about the step approach was really clear and coherent, but that you might take a step back and it is hard and stressful, but to not be too hard on yourself and then the hope that it will pass. There was a lot of information for us to consider, and if anyone has any questions, can you please pop them in the chat and I can discuss with Kelly any that come through. And yeah, it's just really insightful, the diet of the small people in our lives, like what we can do to support them through nutrition. So I really appreciate your webinar and your advice. I had one question, and it was you were talking from 9 to 12 years old that they need five servings of dairy products. And I know some people are leaning more towards a plant-based diet, adults, but also in teenagers. So would you have any advice on is there enough calcium in plant-based products to have that dairy quota, or any advice around that?
Yeah, really good question. Can you hear me okay? Just because my camera has gone. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Great. Yeah, really good question. So the advice is that those kind of alternative milks aren't suitable for young children. You know, the Department of Health would recommend that they use kind of, you know, traditional milk, I suppose. But they are okay for older children, I suppose, as long as you look for the ones that have calcium added to them. So it'll say on them fortified with calcium. So that's really important. Even at that, like I suppose some research would suggest that the calcium within, you know, that's added into those products isn't quite as bioavailable in the body as the calcium, say, in cow's milk. So if you don't have to avoid cow's milk, there's actually no reason to avoid it. Do you know what I mean? So, you know, I would encourage people to stick with traditional dairy products, if they don't have to avoid them for, you know, allergy reasons or anything like that. Obviously, there is a place for alternative milks as well. If, you know, if you prefer to have oat milk in your latte, absolutely do that. But, you know, do try to have some regular dairy products as well, because they have that, you know, natural kind of calcium and vitamin D, that does tend to be a little bit more bioavailable in the body. But yeah, it's fine to get, you know, your intake of calcium from those, but you might consider taking maybe a calcium supplement as well.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Yeah, that was a great advice there. And I think it's key that, you know, calcium is so important for kids, and we don't need to give them plant-based milks just for preference. Again, like you said, if it's not a dietary requirement. And the statistic I've said it previously, was shocked about the iron levels that they need, the same as a 30-year-old man. I'm from my personal experience, I think a question came in around that there. It would be meat, but say if they, like you said, is not really appealing when it's a dark brown color, is there any other advice on how to get the iron in other foods you recommend? Was another query we had come in.
Yeah, sure. So, yeah, it can be really hard to get enough iron into them. So if you can get them to eat things like bolognese or, you know, lasagnas, things like that, but I know it can be difficult. So your fortified breakfast cereals are really important because most of them do contain iron. But it is important to kind of look at the label when you're buying them and look for ones that have at least 12 milligrams of iron added per 100 grams. So that will, you know, give you an indicator that there's enough iron in there to support their diet. Things like fortified milk. So as I said, for the younger children, there are some toddler milks that contain iron, which again can support the intake for those age groups. And for older children, then you know, things like green leafy vegetables, lentils, beans, pulses, they do contain some iron. Again, the plant-based versions of those the iron isn't as bioavailable in the body as from the red meat, say. So it can be harder to get enough iron from those sources. But what you can also do is combine them with vitamin C rich foods, because vitamin C helps iron to be absorbed in the body. So for example, you know, fruit and veg so if you're making a vegetarian chili, for example, with lentils, you know, have it with lots of peppers and broccoli and things like that, because that'll provide the vitamin C to help absorb the iron.
Perfect. Thank you so much. That's great advice. I have another question here, which is what can you do for children with autism that are picky and do not eat a lot of food, or do eat a lot of food?
You eat a lot of food, yeah. I see that there. Yeah, it's a tricky question because I suppose if you're finding it tough to restrict what they're eating and you're probably concerned about their weight then as well, I suppose can I suppose hide food or make sure you're kind of controlling what they're having. Have a look at the portion sizes guide on safe food for the age group, just to give yourself a kind of visual of how much they should be having and what kind of portions, and then take it from there really. But yeah, if they're picky as well, the food chaining, maybe try and give that a go, even though, and that kind of thing would have been developed for children with autism who, are very picky and only eat like one or two types of food or very specific about the brands that they have. So maybe, give that a go. Or, you could maybe consider contacting a dietitian if you feel that there is an issue there as well.
Yeah, that's great advice. And I think, like you said, not to cause a big scene and cause a big fight
Mhm.
because then it only will deter them further. So be cautious and just keep an eye on everything and yeah, treat it with kindness.
Mhm.
And I think Nora here was had some suggestions of adding chopped liver to cottage pies, and that the carrots are really good to be used daily. Through carrot sticks or mashed cooked carrots can actually be added to gravy, and cheddar cheese grated and chopped into sticks as well. So thank you, Nora, for the input there. And I think there are no other questions that have come in. Um, this will also be recorded. I'm sure a lot of our charity partners will be watching the recording back, but I just want to thank you, all of our attendees, for joining the webinar today and for your active participation through the questions and through the advice. And I would also like to give a huge thank you to Danone and especially Kellie O'Connor for sharing your expertise with us today and just some really good insights and ideas for recipes and snacks, which I'm not a toddler or a teenager, but I will be taking them on board for my own diet. So really appreciate. And by partnering with FoodCloud on these series of webinars and the bank of nutritional recipes on our website, Danone has created a unique opportunity to connect with their nutritional and dietary expertise, and we're really grateful that our community partners can then help their wider community with this information and expertise and deliver meaningful impact. So definitely do check out the recipes online, as we have mentioned. If you haven't yet filled out the survey that my colleague Bree shared at the beginning, please do. We can also attach it to the recording. So we would love to get your input for future webinars and future recipes, because you are on the ground and then you know what the needs of the community and you are. But once again, on behalf of FoodCloud and Danone, thank you for coming along, and we hope to see you very soon at another webinar. Thank you.